Shalom. I wish you a very good morning. Peace on you, I learned, is the meaning of shalom, which is a wonderful meaning. Good morning. I'm looking very much forward to presenting to you some economic aspects with spiritual background, a somewhat unusual combination. I myself have been an investment banker for 7 years, but then I couldn't stand it any longer and changed and became a university teacher. So first I made money and now I teach money. That's my background. So I prepared a presentation. Can you see? Does everything work? Can you hear me? Can you see these slides? Does it work? So it's about this spiritual background of recent economic and social trends and the need for a more human economic order. And it will be structured like this. The first part is about inequality, democracy, and freedom. Then the question about man or animal. Then, of course, some solution, let's say social solutions, political solutions. And the last part, how to achieve inner strength. Inequality, democracy, and freedom. What we can observe during the last nearly 40 to 50 years is an amazing development nearly in the entire Western world. As you can see at this slide here of Forbes, is the product data of the United States, which is still the most important economy in the world, especially from a capital point of view. Wall Street and the capital amounts of Wall Street are just overwhelming nearly the entire world. So United States are very important. So that's why sometimes I pick some data from the US. What we can see here is the productivity, the hourly productivity, which increased a lot during the last 70 years. From 1950 to 1970, we can see it nearly doubled. So double the amount you can produce now 2 times as much as during 1950 and 1975. And then productivity goes on and increases again to 230, 240%. And what we can see, the line below is hourly compensation. It's wages. How much do normal people earn? And as we can see, until about 1975, hourly compensation increased by about the same as productivity. But from the 70s, from the 80s, hourly compensation lags a lot, remains behind. So we get a wedge between productivity, and the wages, and that means mass income is lagging behind. So supply is increasing far more rapid than mass income, than mass demand, by a pretty big amount. This applies not only to the United States, but nearly to the entire Western world. And the result of this development is that last year or 2 years ago, is that about 1% of the world population own nearly half of the world wealth. Exactly speaking, 1.2% on the top of the pyramid own 47.8%. So to remember, is 1% of mankind owns 50% of the entire earth, and on the other hand, 53%, the lower half, owns 1.1%. So what we can see is a very unequal distribution of wealth, but also of income. What's behind? How to become rich? Rudolf Steiner described these processes 100 years ago. Where does the damage to social life come from? That we don't notice how we live in the lie of life, how the worker's part is taken away. That means cheating him, taking advantage of him. How does it work? Let's have a look to the annual report of Mercedes. Mercedes-Benz, maybe most of you might know. If you look at the annual report for annual report, for example, of 2021, these are all public numbers. The EBIT, the earnings before interest and taxes, which means profits before taxes, was 29 billion. Net profit after taxes was around 23 billion. And all wages also were around 23 billion. So what has been created in new value was about 46 billion. And of these 46 billion, the people who work at Sindelfingen and Bad Cannstatt got the half. And the other half went to the shareholders. Who are the shareholders? 20% are Chinese shareholders, and 50, 60, 70% are other overseas shareholders who don't even know how to pronounce Sindelfingen or Bad Cannstatt, who never went there. So what we see, a normal worker at Mercedes, let's say an engineer who earns maybe 8,000 euro, which is a lot of money, but the worker produces 16,000, and 8,000 is what's paid to the worker, and the other 8,000 flow to the shareholders without moving one single finger, without knowing where Sindelfingen or Bad Cannstatt or even Stuttgart is. So this means that the workers are taken away about half of their wages. You can read it up in the annual report. If the dividends paid last year, no, in 22, if the dividend paid had not flown to the shareholders but to the workers, each single worker would have had an increase of 23% in the wages. And if all the net profit had been distributed to the employees, the wages could have been increased by 100%. That means cheating him, taking advantage of him. This is how our economy works. I've been an investment banker, have made IPOs, initial public offerings, have traded companies, but it's in all companies, a big chunk of the wages is taken away from the workers and it's flowing to the shareholders, to the owners of the shares. Or this applies also to rent. If you have to live and you pay your rent, who is getting the rent? The owner of the land. So we have three components. It's dividends, profits, it's rent income for renting your home, for example, or it's interest payments. Who owns the papers, the bonds, who owns the shares, who owns the soil, who owns the country? Well, it's the top 1%. So each time I pay rent, each hour I work, each coffee I drink, a certain part of it flows to the top 1% of the population. And that's why inequality is increasing since about 40 to 50 years. Year of Oxfam, January 24. The world's 5 richest men have more than doubled their wealth since 2020, while 5 billion people were made poorer. That's how it works today, how it works the last, let's say, 20, 40, even 50 years. It's a pretty unfair system, let's call it. And even John Maynard Keynes, maybe the most famous economist until today, says in his general theory of 1936, I see, therefore, the rentier aspect of capitalism as a transitional phase, that the euthanasia of the rentier, of the functionless investor, will be nothing sudden, so that the functionless investor will no longer receive a bonus. John Maynard Keynes hints exactly at this point, to receive dividends, to receive rent, to receive interest without doing anything for it. It's not about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are very important, fine people. We need entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is most important. But rentier capitalism is not only wrong, it's bad. It's not only a waste, but it really damages society. So even John Maynard Keynes hints to exactly this point. What's behind?
Christian,
Yeah,
could you speak a little bit slower? It's
slower.
difficult for some people to follow.
Okay,
You can speak a little bit slow, please. Thank you.
okay, I'll try. I'm still very slow in English. Normally it's far more rapid. Oh, fine. Okay. So what's behind? I try to look a little bit behind. Steiner says in 1904, the course of development is not that we will become more democratic, but rather we will become brutally aristocratic, in that the individual will gain more and more power. If the refinement of morals does not take place, it must lead to the most brutal things. So what we see is a concentration of wealth, of economic power, to a increasingly smaller number of people. So power not only of economic power, but also political power increases and is shifted over to a very small number of people, which means it's a kind of aristocracy, because those billionaires, those very rich people, have a very large influence on governments by lobbyism. Many laws are prepared by think tanks who are sponsored by billionaires. Many laws are prepared by big companies who are lobbyists in the parliaments. So the influence of big money, of big companies, is growing stronger and stronger during the last decades. So economic wealth, economic power transforms very strongly into democratic, into political power. And this is how democracy is slowly but surely kind of eliminated, and we are growing more and more into an aristocratic system. And that's exactly what Steiner predicts what will come. So what's the aim? What's the aim is aristocracy shall be restored. You use the phrase of revolution, the phrase of democracy. You use these masks to attain as much power as possible via private capital of a small group of oligarchs. That's what Steiner predicts. What will come, what is the aim, is the abolishing democracy. But it's even much deeper than only that. The most efficient way nowadays to extend power over as many people as possible is the economic way, the economic subordination. For example, via debt. If you have debt, you have to work and work. And if you have to make your living by just working because you don't have capital, you have to labor, you have to work. So these are economic subordination structures. That's the economic way to extend power. But this is only the means. The ends, what is intended in reality, is something completely different. What are the ends? What is the end? The freedom of the will is the real target, which ought to be eliminated. The real purpose is to transform a society in which freedom is possible into a society of slavery. This is what Steiner predicts what will come. The real aim is to abolish not only democracy, the real aim is to abolish freedom. And it's only out of freedom that love can spring from. So the real battle is about our hearts and minds. It's about eliminating freedom. By eliminating freedom, eliminating our love, eliminating the purpose of the earth, since love is the purpose of us, of the humankind. Our love is the ambrosia for the angels, for the gods, like the old Greek people said. Ambrosia, that's the human power, the real human power are our hearts. And that's the nourishment for the gods. And that's what the fight is about our hearts and our minds. And the means are just, economy is just a means to reach these ends. Going back one step again into the economic sphere, what we see during the last 40 years is this here. These are data from the United States. The real United States GDP per capita, gross domestic product per capita, means the real increase in physical wealth has been 86% during these 40 years, 78 to 18. So it's a pretty good increase in physical wealth in the United States. But the median income in the same time frame increased by only 18%. These are US government data, and all data after subtracting inflation. So it's real processes, the real increase of wealth by 86% during the last 40 years, and a real increase in purchasing power by the median income. Median income means those people who are exactly in the middle, where 50% earn more and 50% own less. What we see here is that the production increased far stronger than mass income, what I mentioned in the beginning. So again, we see a gap between supply and demand. And this gap has been closed by debt. Debt increased a lot during the last 40 to 50 years. So far, is it clear so far? Do you have any questions? Is something not understandable?
No,
Or shall I continue?
Can you just explain how debt fills in the gap?
Pardon? How?
How does the debt fill in the gap?
Well, I'll come back to this. I come back to this. How the gap will be filled and what will happen, or what might happen. Yeah, it's. Yes, I'm answering by further slides. So what's behind? I'll come back to debt in a minute. What's behind? What's behind this development? Kreiß says in Vienna in 1914, things are now produced for the market, regardless of the amount required. All that is produced is piled up in warehouses and governed by the money market, and then producers wait to see how many are bought. This tendency will grow greater and greater until it destroys itself. One sees the germ of frightful social abscesses springing up everywhere to become a cancer, societal carcinoma, societal cancer. Steiner hints here to a development until 1914, which is nearly exactly the same as we can see today. We have seen during the last 70 years growth, but growth like a cancer. Growth which is not funded by real mass income, by real productivity which flows to the people, but growth which has been funded by debt. And this won't work in the long run. I come back to debt here. These are numbers of the International Monetary Fund from September 23. And that's a total debt of the world in comparison to GDP, to gross domestic product, in comparison to the real production power. And what we can see is during the 50s, 60s, 70s, debt, there was about $1.2, $1.3 debt per dollar GDP. Then it went up enormously, the debt, until the first financial crisis in 2008. During the first financial crisis, debt was around 195% of GDP. So nearly per $1 GDP, we have seen $2 of debt worldwide. This was too high. This was too much. that led to the dramatic financial crisis. And this debt, which was too high, has now been resolved. This problem has been resolved by more debt. The debt which was too high in 2008, which led to this huge financial crisis, was resolved by more debt. It's no fun. It's no fun. It's real. How can this be? How can the problem of a too large debt burden be resolved by even further debt? Well, the answer is by reducing interest rates. During the last 15 years, the central banks reduced interests to nearly zero in the United States, in the Euro area, in Great Britain, in Japan, in Switzerland, in all Western countries. And at the same time, the amount of money printed by the central banks has been dramatically increased. We can here have a look at the central bank balance sheet of the United States, the Federal Reserve Bank, who is the sole institution who is allowed to print dollar bills and to print dollar electronically. What we can see here is that the central bank amount, the amount of dollars was before the financial crisis was about 0.8 trillion. And then it went up to 9 trillion. It's been increased tenfold. Today it's around 7.6, 7.7. It's still nearly 10 times as high as it was before the financial crisis. So that's amazing. That has never happened in US history, that the amount of dollars printed has been increased tenfold. Where will flow all these dollars? Where will flow all these dollars? This nearly the same applies to the Central Bank of Europe, of the Euro area. Here also the amount of freshly printed money has been increased 7 times more or less. So we have a singular historical situation. We have a debt load so high as we've never seen in history, and there has been printed fresh money in an amount what we have never seen in history, never seen in recent history. So what will come? What will come? We have a huge debt and money overhang until today. Until today. What will come? Maybe inflation? I don't think so. Maybe a financial crisis, depression, maybe deflation. Somehow this debt will have been to reduced, or maybe war, who knows? I don't hope so. So what's behind? What's behind? Steiner says, there are different tools the adversary, the unlawful prince of this world can choose. For example, hunger and social chaos. Then physical power, pressure, compulsion are used instead of the free will of humanity. So if this debt overhang will be resolved by a depression, as we've seen in 1930 to 1932, there will be hunger and social chaos. And then again, freedom will be very much restricted by police, the military, by orders. And again, that's the real attack on our hearts, on our freedom. That's the real attack which is behind. So the adversarial powers, they're very happy with this situation. Let the humans produce more and more and more. Let load up more and more debt, and then we'll have a perfect storm, a perfect chaos. And that's the very end of these processes. They are jubilating. If people are suffering, then the hearts are in fear, the hearts are not free, and they can resolve our energy. That's what's really behind. Because love springs from freedom. If our hearts are enveloped in fear, we become unfree beings. And as I said before, love, as the old Greek people said, is the ambrosia, is the nourishment of the gods. And that's what this fight is about. It's a battle for our hearts, for our heart energy. Will we serve the good gods or the retarded ones, like Lucifer, Ariman. So the real battle is for our hearts. It's all about a spiritual fight within our hearts and minds. It's not about economy. Economy is only the mean. And Stein is predicting from around the new century that these battles will increase. These battles are just beginning. Humanity does not know that it's dancing on a volcano, but we are dancing on a volcano. That's what he said in 1906, and then came the two terrific world wars. And at the end of the 20th century, this is the time of big decisions, that big crisis that the holy books of all time actually speak about. So we are now a little bit over the end of the 20th centuries, and the economic forces you can watch out there in the world, they are not sustainable. There will arrive something, there will happen something, I don't know what, but the debt load is so high. I've been a banker in 3 banks for 9 years, 7 years investment banking. The debt load is so high, it can't be repaid. There must be some kind of, I don't know what, some kind of reduction. And there are many very, very harmful ways to reduce debt. At the end of the 20th century, and this means that the final decision must be made to save the Earth's civilization of decline. Steiner hints again and again to the end of the 20th century as a very important period, but where we are within right now. Is it so wide, so far? Understandable. Yeah? So this is one string of attacks of the adversarial powers on mankind, nearly purely economical attack, let's call. And I will address one second line of attack, man or animal. Goethe writes in his Faust, he, let's say, Mephistopheles, nennt's Vernunft und braucht's allein nur tierischer als jedes Tier zu sein. In English, he calls it reason, and it's only used to be more animal than any animal. So that's the second string of attack on mankind by Mephistopheles and his friends. This very important choice man faces today, to return to be like an animal, to become more animal than any animal. This is exactly what Mephisto tries to achieve, or to absorb, to take in spirituality. This is what all these fights are about, not only since decades, but even, let's say, even since centuries. What are the means? So the goal is to make man more an animal than a human being. And what are the means? For example, computer games. Computer games, for example, Fortnite is played by 350 million children worldwide. 350 million. Fortnite is a killer game. It's a war of all against one, all against all. You're being put on an island with 100 other fellows, and one will survive. Either you kill or you will be killed. It's war of all against all, and it's free, and nearly all boys, 12 years old boys, for example, in Germany, are playing this game. And these kinds of games have been applied by the US military already 2004, before the attack to Iraq. They trained their young soldiers hours and hours per day under psychological surveillance to become less empathic, to become less animal, to become killers, to don't have Mitleid. What's Mitleid, Ewald? Compassion.
Compassion.
Don't have compassion, but kill them. If you see a person suffering, kill the man. It's not a man, it's just an object. So these games, what are these games doing? They are dehumanizing our boys. Right now, nearly all boys are playing these games, and no one discusses about in any way. They tell us, oh, it's just big business, epic games. The developer Fortnite is worth $32 billion on Wall Street, is saying Wall Street Journal. Well, it's just about business. It's not business. It's not about business. It's not even about money. This is an attack of the adversarial powers on the hearts and minds of our boys. And one other attack. Steiner says in 1918, certain instincts. Can you read this text on your screen?
Yes, yes.
Certain instincts from sexual life and sexual being will emerge in a harmful, destructive way. Instincts that would not just mean aberrations. Natural science will not notice anything about the event, because when people become half devils because of their sexual instincts, they will naturally see this as a natural necessity. You will call the damage useful. One would call the sick person healthy. If man felt such a feeling of well-being in pursuing certain aberrations of sexual instincts, he would praise this aberration as a particularly high expression of unbiasedness, unprejudicedness, of impartiality. Ugly will be called beautiful, and beautiful will be called ugly. And then let's have a look on our media and our recent social trends. The porn traffic worldwide is probably more than $100 billion. What's the meaning of porn? Well, you can have anything in a big picture, any kind of aberration, anything you want at any time you want. That's not about money, you say. That's not an industry. That's an attack on our instincts, on our human being. This is trying to bring us in our animal sphere, in our instincts, to dehumanize it. And a second very, very strong string is the trans, the gender, the LGBTQ movement, and so on. What are today our children told from the earliest age in kindergarten, in basic school? They are sexualized in a way which was unimaginable some decades ago. From 5, 6 years old, they are confronted with sexual behavior. They are told there are 16 sexes, not only 2. If you say there are only 2 sexes, that's discriminating trans people. You are a murderer because you want to murder trans people. You are not allowed any longer to say there are only 2 sexes, but there are only 2 sexes. So this is a big attack on the hearts and minds of our children. What's happening? It's much more important than money or prejudices. It's about destroying orientation, guidance of our children. It's about destroying ethics, religion, spirituality of our children. It's not about money. That's just a trick. Some people are paid a lot of money to transform these thoughts into society. But this is a real attack of the adversarial powers in the minds and in the soul, in the hearts of our children, and thus leading to these aberrations, sexual aberrations that Steiner predicted would happen from about the end of the 20th century. Well, I think international, I'll let this away. Solutions, what can we do? What can we do? It's not fighting, but mutual help that ensures long existence. The species that are left are those that support each other the most, and those that are the most warlike among themselves have perished. That's the law of nature. That's the law of nature. We are told other things in our schools, in biology, for example. That's a real thing. We have to help another. We have to help another. We have to cooperate instead of fighting ourselves. And that's what we have to do. One thing is the threefold state, which Steiner proposed in 1919, 1920, 1918. And for me personally, the threefold state is the only thing that will work. But I won't elaborate very much on this. I have a look on my watch here. Threefold state means we need an independent economic order. We need fraternity within the economy. We need an independent political order, no lobbyism, and so on. True democracy, no overwhelming of politicians by billionaires, by big companies. That's a no-go. No lobbyists into the parliament, a circle of 500 meters of 1 mile around the parliament. No lobbyists may enter to parliament whatsoever. And the third thing, we need an independent cultural life, free media, free schools, free high schools, universities, free science. We don't have free science in Germany. We don't have free schools in Germany. It's all state schools, state universities, nearly all state schools. There are some private schools, but they are expensive. We don't have free cultural life. We don't have free schools. I'm a university teacher. We don't have freedom to just teach, to found a new faculty which is promoting, let's say, the threefold state, or Karl Marx, or Silvio Giselle, or other thinkers. That's just not possible in Germany, because you have to get a seal from the state that you are allowed to do so. And if you don't get the seal, you just can't teach it. It's very simple. We don't have free universities, free schools in Germany. But it's not only Germany, it's the same in France and even Great Britain. There's just a very small fraction of private schools or private universities, a very small fraction, which is very expensive. But the big chunk of the people, of the students, of the pupils, they have to pass through these pretty bad state schools. So threefold state. In laws and politics, it's égalité, it's liberty, égalité, fraternity, what the French Revolution said. So equality in political affairs, before the laws, all are equal, and so on. I want to elaborate very much on that. What we need in the social and economic sphere is a minimum fairness in the distribution of wages and wealth, because if you have a very strong oligarchy, like in South America, where a few families own nearly the entire country, there will never grow enough mass income to mass demand to develop industry. So if the inequality is too strong, there won't be any wealth in these countries, as you can very good watch and throughout Latin America. And the third thing is freedom of mental life, freedom of spiritual life. I say something, I won't elaborate on this. So what can we do? I don't want to elaborate very much on the political sphere. We would need a free press today. At least in Germany, at least in Europe, we do not have a free press. We have a billionaire press owned by some few billionaire families, and we have state press. And if you have a third opinion, you just won't be heard in the big media throughout Europe. We don't have any kind of free press. And again, it's a billionaire press or state-owned press. And if you say something against the state or against the billionaires, yeah, they just try to calm you down, or even more evil things. We have not really free science. I wrote 2 books on this in Germany about corrupted science. We don't really have very much free science. There's still a small string of free science in Germany. I still, for example, still exist, but it's growing smaller and smaller from decade to decade. And yeah, our democracy, in my opinion, is very much influenced by big lobbies, not only in Germany, but also in the United States, for example. Okay, I won't elaborate on political measures. Now I come to the third part, to the last part. What can we do to resolve the situation from within? Because I think the real attack is on our minds, on our souls, on our hearts. And what can we do against this? There exists a poem of Friedrich Schiller, Die Künstler, the artist, and there he says, "Only through the morning gate of the beautiful did you enter into the knowledge land." So the poet fixes together beauty and knowledge, to know from beauty. That's very unconventional, but it's meant as it is said. There's a very strong connect between truth, between sincerity, honesty, and beauty. What is this connect? What is truth? Steiner? Well, we call it truth when we can recreate an exterior within, when we correctly experience an exterior within. And he says, knowledge is communion. Communion. If you put yourself into the other being, then you understand it from within. If you really love another man or woman, you go into this other human being and then you know it. So knowledge depends very much on love. Every being to whom you give your love reveals its nature to you. For lovelessness is a veil that covers the things of the world and covers them. As much as you pour out love, so much knowledge flows to you. For what is love other than expanding one's consciousness over other beings? These are all citations of Steiner. So what we see is that love is very important, and beauty is the key. Beauty is one key to love, because if something is beautiful, imagine a young child in a beautiful ambient, in a beautiful surrounding, it will open its heart, it will open its mind and crawl into the other beings around, maybe in a small animal, maybe in a flower, maybe in an amethyst. So the children, if they are in a beautiful surrounding, they open their hearts, they open their mind, they get into them, and then they know them. They get knowledge of them. So knowledge, wisdom, truth has very much to do with beauty, which opens the heart, with love, which opens the heart of the other being, and then you know. So there's a very strong correlation between beauty and truth. And it's not only beauty and truth, but the third thing, which springs from truth, is the good. Steiner says, all evil in the world springs from lie or error, from untruth. If we are in the truth, if we are in the real wisdom, we won't be evil anymore. So the beautiful truth and the good, this Trinity, this Holy Trinity, is just a Trinity. And if I were Mephisto, I would try to attack the very idea of beauty. I would say to men, oh, so beauty is just a nice luxury. It's not really important. If you shoot down beauty, then you shoot down truth, then you shoot down evil. Then you open the door for the evil. So this is, in my opinion, it's a very strong attack of the adversarial powers. And materialism has done very much to destroy truth via destroying the feeling for beauty, via destroying that beautifulness is something which is of importance. So that's another string of attack, and we can change it by creating a beautiful surrounding, be it by buildings, be it within the buildings. If you have a Waldorf kindergarten, oh, that's just beautiful. And the minds and hearts are open. So what we can do is just create a beautiful surrounding, since what enters through our eyes into our soul shapes very much our feeling of truth, our feeling of love, our feeling for the good. So just let's have beautiful buildings. And the few pictures I could find on the internet of your kibbutz were just, for me, very pretty, beautiful buildings. So I think you try to shape to yourself a beautiful surrounding, and that's good not only for your heart, it's also good for your knowledge, for your perception of truth, and also for becoming good instead of evil. So living in beauty is just very important. That's the first thing we can do. Where comes inner strength from? And now I'm coming to the end. I hope it's okay, Axel. Is it maybe still 10 minutes or so? Is that okay?
That's fine.
So how to achieve inner strength? The first thing that needs to be learned is to learn to stand firm. These are all citations of Steiner. At each slide where you can see the head of Steiner, it's citations. The first thing is to learn to stand firm. That is, that we have a secure footing in the turmoil of life, that we no longer know any fear or anxiety, but are calm and confident in facing events, no matter how they come like. Look calmly in the eye of any coming event. Our feelings of fear and anxiety are food for other evil spiritual entities. We don't have to allow such thoughts to arise. So, but the aim to reduce, to eliminate fear. Fear and anxiety is just wrong. Of course, everyone has fear and anxiety. We have it within us, within our heart. And one of the top attacks of the adversarial spirits is just to create fear within us. Steiner says at one point, Ahriman, the bringer of fear. Ahriman, the bringer of fear. So he says that's just one of the main purposes, to wrap our hearts into fear, to again reduce or destroy our freedom, and to grasp our heart energy, to push our heart energy not to the good gods, but to the evil ones. That's, again, it's just about our hearts and minds. And if we know it, we can react. There are so many wonderful meditations that Steiner gave us that we can easily tread this path, but it's hard to follow it consequently. But there are so many means to strengthen us from within, which Steiner gave us. It's just wonderful. It's just great. And treading this path of knowledge is just giving us so much inner strength that we can withstand all those attacks, which I mentioned in the first and the second part. So it's precisely this fearlessness that you have to achieve, let's say, through very specific meditations. He gives, for example, one meditation. You can do that, but you usually don't have enough stamina for the meditation that are part of it. So that's a warning. Just stand firm and continue. A good meditation, for example, is to dedicate yourself, oh, it's a mistake, again and again to the idea that just because you know about something, that thing does not become different from what it is. Yes, has anything changed about something because people know about it? This sentence, these two sentences, as a meditation for years, I did it for years. These simple sentences, meditated for years, and your fear will grow, will become smaller and smaller. So there are many I passed through some things. It's 9:55. And often we ask ourselves, on our earth, why is so much evil in the earth? Why does God let happen all this evil? The old question of theodicy, the meaning of evil. Why is there so much evil in the world? And during the night, when you lie awake at 1:30 or at 2 o'clock in the morning with sweat on your frontal, oh man, why is there so much evil in the world? You can have one thought: without evil, there wouldn't be the good. And without the choice of the evil, we would not have freedom, human freedom. The dog, the wolf, they just kill the lamb and eat it. They're not free. The child, 5 years old, is not free. But we can choose between the evil and the good. That's where freedom comes from. And out of freedom springs love, the true love. So in the night, if you have again sweat pearls on your front, say, okay, why is in the world so much evil? Okay, without evil, there couldn't be good, there couldn't be freedom, and there couldn't be love. So what's the means? What's the mission of the evil? Is there's a Steiner mentions it's very often the mission of the evil. What's the sense of the evil is to purify our hearts, to make us good, to overcome evil. And the more heavy the load of card of evil is, the more strongly we must develop in our hearts the good, the fine. We must make it like a diamond. We must clear it. And that's the job of the evil. That's even the job of Mephisto and the other bad devils and so on. That's their job, to make us conscious that we have to grow within our hearts in love, in freedom, and in strength. And we can this via meditations which Steiner gave to us. They are so wonderful, these meditations, especially those of 1924, the so-called class hours. I don't know how to meditate them in English. I can't tell you that. But there's so much power in these phrases, in these mantras. It's incredible. There's so much power. And if you go this inner way, if you go through your own evil things within your soul, within your heart, beginning with childhood. Oh, what have I done when I was 8 years or 10 years old? What have I done to small animals? For example, putting salt on snails and looking, oh, what's happened? That's what I've done as a child. If you look at these things, cruel things, but you think, okay, when 8, when 10 years old, I was only a child. And then you pass through your life to the bad things you did. And each step you get to know the bad, the evil within you, and to overcome it and turn it into love. With each such step of self-conscience, of self-knowledge, you grow stronger in your heart. It's a very bitter way. You must be very, very truthful, very truthful, to really look at your own weaknesses. It's the way of to overcome the dragon, the 7-headed, the 9-headed dragon. You just have to overcome the evil within you. And the more you know about yourself, you will know about the world. The more you know about these evil beings that attack our heart, the stronger you grow. And in the end, after decades of meditations, maybe which will last until the next incarnation, after decades of meditations, you slowly, slowly grow stronger and stronger, and your heart becomes firmer, and you can stand life in a completely different way. That's just my experience with Steiner. I didn't know this man until I was 36 years old. No idea who is that. And then I started to read it because our first child went to Waldorf school. I didn't even know what's Waldorf school. And this way was just, for me, so amazing. I can't tell you. It's just so great. There's so much power within you, divine power, which you can come to by going very, very truthful within you during these bad things within you, resolve them, know them, and overcome them. And this is giving us a strength which is just nearly indescribable. So I want to give you more, to encourage you. This way is so strong, is so wonderful, that after going this way, or while going this way, you see the evil in the world and say, it's evil, there's very much evil, but it's got an aim, it's got a mission. We as mankind have to learn to overcome it, and to overcome even Mephisto and the other bad spirits. So don't be exhausted, don't be verzweifeln. No desperation, no reason for that. If you know the context, what it's all about, that we come from the divine, that we go through this darkness, and we know it and overcome it and go back to the divine. If you know this way, and if this way, and if you feel it in your heart, then you get pretty much humble and say, okay, this is just a wonderful plan in the world behind, and I can grasp it. I can go this way and try to make my heart better, my soul, my mind clearer, more truthful, and to go this path. So this is very, 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 very encouraging. I know pass through the rest of the slides. Yeah, where comes health from? It's, I think it's now 10:03. It was this book exactly which changed my entire life. And one last citation of my so much loved Rudolf Steiner. The only solution for the social question can come from the recognition of man's spiritual nature, from the recognition that what goes around on the earth as the human physical body is only the outward expression of what lights up in every man out of the eternal. And if we have this feeling within us, that in the man, which I see, that there's something eternal in it, but also in the bird, in the tree, in the amethyst, in the rock, if we see shining through something eternal, something divine, then we will act differently, and then there will arise real love to man and real dignity of man. It can only arise from seeing the divine within the other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. We have still a bit of time for questions. And maybe I can start with one question which occupies me, which leads us back a little bit to the more practical aspects of what is happening now. I want to ask what you can say to the apparent tendency to get rid of cash money and replace it by digital currency by the central bank.
I think this is intended because digital money is a wonderful tool of power to control us. If there's left only digital money, we can be, on the one hand, controlled. They know everything about us, whatever I buy. And the second thing is, if there are people who oppose the system, who criticize government, you can just stop their bank account. This happened in UK 1 or 2 years ago with, I think, Nigel Farage, he's called. Nigel Farage is a pretty famous politician who proposed the exit in 2016 in Great Britain. And about 2 years ago, his bank account was cancelled. And he couldn't get cash any longer. He couldn't get his money. And suppose that there's only digital money and your bank cuts you off from your money. You can't buy anything. So that's a superb tool to install aristocracy, to install dictatorship. It's a perfect tool to control us, to intimidate us. So I think it will come.
No fear. Okay, any questions? Ruben, please. Can you hear me? Come, please come closer to the microphone.
I wonder about the possibility of a connection between the economic processes which you described and the ecological crisis. And my idea, and I would appreciate if you comment about it, is that the debt, one of the influences of the debt that you talked about, is that actually we become more and more indebted to next generations. And that in order to fill in, at least partly, this debt, we fervently try to take more and more from the earth in order, at least partly, to produce more and to give back a part of this debt. But maybe it's my idea. I don't know if you see this connection as well.
Yes, thank you. As I understood, the connection between ecology and debt and growth. Of course, the system that we see during the last 40 years is absurd. It's cancerous. And I speak only about the rich countries and within the rich countries about the so-called middle class. I don't speak about Africa, Latin America, or India. There still live very many poor people. If they have more to eat and more clothes and so on, that would be good. There, for these really poor people, growth would be a good thing. But the largest chunk of growth, the largest part of ecological disaster comes from the Western world, from the industrialized countries, meanwhile also from China. So it's the rich countries that destroy ecology most. And it's upon us to stop this system of compound interest. I didn't mention it in the first part. Compound interest, which means interest on interest. All our money is based on interest. So any growth, any new loan I take out, I have to pay more, and that's inducing automatically growth. You have to grow to repay your debt, and all our money is debt money. So this system leads automatically to compulsory growth and to compulsory destroying our environment. So this system, this cancerous system, the system of cancer growth, how Rudolf Steiner called it, it's just cancer. It's a sickness. We should have to transform this system in the long run completely. Stop interest, compound interest, stop accumulation of big fortunes of above 10 or 100 million. It's just nonsense to have such big private wealth. It's just wrong. It's from an ethical, from a religious point of view, it's wrong. From an economic point of view, it's wrong. So in the long run, you're right. it's the Western world which is mostly responsible for the ecological disaster. We are living on the expense of our next generations via transforming to them this huge amount of debt, this huge amount of money, and this huge destruction of the earth, that we take too many resources from earth. It's in the end, it's the adversarial powers who bring us into more greed and having, and that's the growth system which we are in, and that's the wrong system. And if we know this, if we know the truth about what's really behind, we can in the long run just stop it and become just more brother-like to earth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christian, you hear me? I want to ask you in a practical way, what in your everyday life you are doing to change your economical relationship to the world. If you have some practical example that we can experiment in our life.
Well, one thing, I changed my profession. I was an investment banker and said, no, I don't want to be any longer an investment banker. I want to teach about money and investment instead of doing it. And well, me personally, I'm buying ecological food for nearly 40 years. Yeah, nearly all, if it's possible, we buy only ecological food. I think it's not only better for the environment, it's better for everything. Ecological food. I try to avoid flying. I try to avoid really using my car. So in our private life as a family, we try to bike a lot, and we try to minimize the fuels, gasoline, and so on. We are heating very often with wood instead of gas. So, but that has been long before this younger movement of the ecological movement. We do it since 20, 30, 40 years. So it's, if you're, and me personally, I don't eat meat since 1 or 2 decades. I don't know. It's just, to me, I can't eat it any longer. If you see an animal, say, oh, it's got to be killed for me. I don't want this. I know that Indians or shaman and they appreciate food. It's fine for everyone to eat food, to eat meat. If you're grateful to the animal which gives this was ist Opfer, it gives its meat to you. But me personally, I can't eat any more meat. And if you eat less meat, you also need less production, less Landwirtschaft, less food production. So it's just my personal view. And also there, Steiner changed a lot in my behavior towards the environment.
Thank you. Hi.
Christian, hello.
Hello.
I was very touched what you gave us with your lecture. And for me, if in my life, the most important, tell it in Harduf also, it's the truth. Where there is no truth, you told, or Steiner told, there is no love. And this is our real, our future for the mankind to fulfill here. And you know, all what is the politics and all what happens now, the death, it's all not truth, and it's going to get rotten. And it's 1% who is, they want to direct the world. And they have also about 5%, they help them in some way and get money from them. You didn't tell it, but it's about this. And then we are the majority, 95%. But we are not awake. And they let us work even more, that we have no power to resist, to make democracy demonstrations and everything, to be involved, to do something different. But you understand what I mean? That more and more, because the wages are lower, we have to work 20 hours to get the same wage than like 50 years ago. And what can we do that the majority is waking up, that we all are making demonstrations? Like in Israel, we woke up here half a year ago, and there were a lot of demonstrations, and because everything is rotten, you know, you see it, everybody is seeing. So it's a lie and everything. What do you see? How we can wake up? It's, you know, when you're waking up, you change something. Yes. Again, please.
I agree completely. Fortunately, we do not have a war in our country as you poor people have since October. This awakening process is so difficult. If you believe to know a truth about the world which is different from another brother or sister of you, it's what I learned during the Corona period here in our country, in Germany, it was very, very hard to discuss with people who were of other opinion, be it the vaccination, be it the mask and so on. That you nearly could not reach the minds and hearts of other people, which before I liked very much, and it was just kind of no bridge anymore to communicate, no communication. It was just incredible that you could not speak any longer to people you like about certain subjects. It was so hard. And there's one thing which I learned: you have to differentiate between the very soul, the very inner being of the other man, and his opinion on some subject. You have to differentiate. It's like Steiner says, if your son or if your daughter do something wrong, you hate the wrong he did. You don't hate himself. You have to differentiate the opinion, the doing of someone. You can say, that's wrong, that's bad, that's erroneous, that's evil. And you may even hate this evil deed, but you may never hate the other person in its eternal being. And that, for me, was a very important learning procedure, very hard and very sorrowful learning procedure, to differentiate, to accept the other man, the other being, as a person, and not to dash him or not to hate him because of his opinion. And that's one bridge we can do if we believe to have the truth. We can always be erroneous. If we believe that we have the truth, that we can try to say our opinion, or we can try to say our opinion to the fellow man, but always with respect, always with love within you. Even if you are complete contrary opinion, you have always to kind of, it's very hard and very sorrowful if you learn about yourself that it doesn't work. But if it works, you can accept the other person in its inner kernel, and as well be not of the same opinion. So that was what I tried during the last 3 to 4 years, to convince other people of this awakening process without judging them. That's, I think, the only way, is the way through love, through acceptance.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Please. Anna.
Thank you very much. I'm really influenced by your lecture. Do you hear me?
Yes.
I really I was influenced, but I'm really depressed now. I think that the way that you put that all the, let's say, the bad guys or the bad conscience is really, really strong now. And the way of dealing with it, it's by meditation and trying to see the beautiful and the love. Someone have to really believe that this is the tool to confront it, because I would like to know if you think that it can change, or it's this path will be, you know, worse and worse, because as you say, it's not only about the money, it's about even, you know, little children that they have to, you know, most of the day be with the video games and all this way of taking their hearts and taking their knowledge already from the beginning. So it seems like it's not a fair fight. And the solution, that what I felt, it's like the solution is like the association that I felt, it's like somebody is already in the prison, like the hostages, and they have only to imagine something, the light and the good, but the truth is that they're in the dark and they're, you know, captured. So that's what I felt also from the way of the society now, the human being now.
Oh, my.
In one phrase, I would like to do you think it's going to be worse? And do you think there is a practice solution to change it?
Oh my God, I did not want to depress you. I just wanted to do the very opposite thing. So in the final part, I tried to show that the love, the light are far stronger than the dark forces, and that there's a mission of the evil. So I'm very sorry, it's sorrowful for me that you say you've been depressed. There is, we can use the situation. We are just citizens of this earth to learn for the sky, to learn for the life after this life, after our death, to learn for our next incarnation. It's just coming again and again, the incarnations. So it's the very opposite. I did not want to depress you in any way. If you know about the true angels, if you can see them or feel them, if you know this light within you in the meditation, then you get so strong that you can even see evil processes in the world, which before I couldn't stand. So what will come? Your question, I think the dark forces will increase and increase, as Steiner predicts it. And so the light forces, we, in our hearts, with the light within us, we have to counterbalance it. And it's just a challenge for us to increase our love, to increase our truth, to increase the beautiful surrounding, to do against it as much as we can. And we do as much as we can, and the rest is in God's hand. That's all we can do. And that's a lot, and that's enough. Just do as much as you can. Strengthen your heart, become more courageous, decrease your fear, speak out of your heart to other people in your surrounding. And that's all you can do. And that's a lot you can do. You can give hope to others. If you are strong in your heart, if you are rooted in the spiritual world, you can give strength to others. And that's all we can do. And that's a lot. And that's enough. And what will come will come. If the dark forces grow stronger, they will grow stronger. We will have to fight more. We will, with our love, against them. And then it comes as it comes. And one individual won't be able to change the world. Maybe a small critical mass of people who are awakened, if they are not erroneously awakened, maybe we can even change the world in the long run. And that's just our job, to to see the evil, but you have to stop to look at the evil. If your heart isn't strong enough, you just stop. No, I don't want to intensify my knowledge about Ukraine, about Palestinian war. I don't know. It's enough. I don't want to see any longer these cruel pictures. Yes, that's fine. You have to protect your heart. You don't have to look too intensely on the evil, on the bad things. But if you do this, there's so much strength within us, so much hope, so much knowledge about the powers of the light forces. You don't have to be depressed in no way. It's just these forces are so wonderful and so strong. Don't be depressed. Just be full of courage.
Yeah, Christian, thank you so much.